My people, let us think beyond today. Yes, generators can give us light, but at what cost? Every night, we spend money on fuel, we endure the noise, and we breathe in smoke that is not good for our health. Solar energy gives us something different. Peace. No noise, no daily spending on fuel. When the sun refuses to shine, Mama Bella, will your solar still give us light? Or will we sit in darkness waiting? At least my generator works anytime I need it.
In Nigeria, steady electricity has long felt like a distant promise, something people talk about more than they actually experience. For years, families have learned to adapt, finding their own ways to survive in the absence of reliable power. Some hold on to hope that things will improve, while others have stopped waiting altogether and taken matters into their own hands. Across towns and cities, you will find different solutions humming and glowing in homes. The low rumble of generators has become a familiar soundtrack, filling the air every evening as darkness settles in. At the same time, the quiet rise of solar panels has begun to change the story for many households. Where generators roar, solar systems sit silently, soaking up the sun during the day and offering light at night. In one small community, tucked away from the noise of the bigger cities, this difference in approach became more than just a matter of preference. It turned into a full-blown rivalry that no one initially saw coming. The heart of it all lay between two women, Mama Caro and Mama Bella. Both were well known in the community, not just because of their strong personalities, but also because of the influence they carried among other women. They were respected, listened to, and often followed. If there was ever a gathering, you could be sure that one of them would have something to say, and people would pay attention. Mama Caro was a firm believer in generators. To her, nothing beat the reliability of fueling up a machine and knowing it would deliver power immediately. She liked control. She liked certainty. Solar panels, in her opinion, were unpredictable. What happens when the sun refuses to shine? She would ask anyone willing to listen. She often shared stories of nights when her generator kept her household running while others sat in darkness. To her, that was proof enough. Mama Bella, on the other hand, stood strongly for solar energy. She had made the switch years ago and never looked back. To her, solar power was clean, quiet, and cost-effective in the long run. She often pointed out how she no longer had to worry about fuel prices or the constant noise of generators disrupting her peace. Her home had become something of an example in the community, a place people visited out of curiosity and sometimes admiration. What began as harmless conversations soon turned into heated arguments. At the market, at the well, during evening gatherings, their debates grew louder and more intense. At first, people laughed about it. It felt like harmless banter between two strong-willed women. But gradually, the tone began to shift. People started choosing sides, sometimes for practical reasons, other times simply out of loyalty. A woman whose husband relied heavily on a generator would naturally support Mama Caro. Another who had recently installed solar panels would stand firmly with Mama Bella. Before long, the community was quietly dividing itself. Before long, it stopped being just about electricity. It became personal. Mama Caro and Mama Bella, once cordial acquaintances, turned into rivals who could barely stand the sight of each other. Every discussion between them carried tension. Every exchange felt like a contest that needed a winner. Even their greetings became shorter, sharper, and filled with unspoken competition. Then came the idea that changed everything. If words were not enough, they would prove their point through action. During one particularly heated exchange in the marketplace, Mama Caro challenged Mama Bella openly. Instead of going back and forth endlessly, she suggested they settle the matter once and for all. Mama Bella did not hesitate to accept. Right there, in front of other women, they agreed to turn their disagreement into a competition. Each woman would gather supporters from the community. They would campaign, convince, and demonstrate the strength of their chosen solution. Whoever could win more support and show stronger conviction would not only prove her point, but would also be crowned the women's community leader. The moment that agreement was made, the atmosphere changed instantly. It was no longer just a disagreement. It had become a mission. The announcement spread quickly, moving from one compound to another, from whispered conversations to open discussions. What had once been a simple argument now felt like a major event that everyone wanted to be part of. Women began to align themselves more openly with either Mama Caro or Mama Bella. Those who relied on generators naturally gravitated toward Mama Caro. They shared stories of how their machines had saved them during long blackouts, how they could depend on them at any hour, and how they felt secure knowing they had power whenever they needed it. Meanwhile, Mama Bella's supporters spoke passionately about the benefits of solar. They talked about lower costs over time, the absence of noise, and the sense of independence that came with harnessing sunlight. Some even began encouraging others to consider switching, pointing out how peaceful their homes had become. Meetings were held more frequently than before. Small groups gathered in compounds, under trees, and in open spaces to discuss strategies. Each side became more organized, more deliberate in how they presented their arguments. Mama Caro took things seriously. She arranged practical demonstrations, inviting women to witness how quickly a generator could bring life back into a dark home. She emphasized reliability, reminding people of cloudy days, long rainy seasons, and the unpredictability of weather. Mama Bella responded with equal determination. She opened her home more often, walking visitors through her solar setup. She explained how it worked in simple terms, showing them her batteries, her panels, and how everything connected. She made it feel accessible, something they too could achieve. As the days passed, the competition grew fiercer. What neither of them realized at first was how deeply their rivalry was beginning to affect the unity of the community. Friendly conversations slowly turned into subtle arguments. Neighbors who once borrowed things freely from each other now hesitated, unsure of where loyalties lay. Even simple evening gatherings were no longer the same. Instead of laughter and shared stories, discussions often circled back to the same topic: generator or solar, noise or silence, immediate power or long-term savings. Children began to notice the tension too. They heard their mothers speak passionately at home and carried those opinions into their play. Some would joke about generators being loud, while others would mock solar users when the sun was not bright enough. Still, neither woman was ready to back down. Mama Caro became more vocal, more determined to prove that her choice was the better one. She believed deeply that she was fighting for practicality, for something that would not fail when it mattered most. Mama Bella, on her part, grew even more confident. She saw herself as someone pushing the community forward, introducing a smarter and more sustainable way of living. Both women believed they were right. Both women believed they deserved to lead. And with every passing day, their supporters grew more committed, more passionate, and more involved in the outcome of the competition. The stage was set, and the entire community watched closely as the battle between solar and generator unfolded, each side waiting for the moment that would finally prove, beyond doubt, which path was truly the best. As the competition intensified, the community found itself caught in a struggle that seemed to have no clear end. What was meant to bring clarity had instead created confusion, tension, and unexpected consequences. Mama Caro's camp grew louder and more assertive. The sound of generators filled the evenings more than ever as her supporters made it a point to demonstrate their choice. They wanted everyone to see and hear the power they believed in. At dusk, one could walk through the narrow paths of the community and hear engines roaring to life almost in unison, as if responding to an unspoken signal. Some women even took pride in whose generator sounded the strongest, whose lights came on the fastest, and whose compound appeared the brightest from a distance. It became a quiet contest within the larger competition. But with that came challenges. Fuel became more expensive, and the constant noise began to wear people down. Conversations had to be raised over the rumbling machines, and sleep did not come as easily as it once did. Some households struggled to keep up with the cost, even though they remained loyal to Mama Caro. A few began to cut down on usage, turning off their generators earlier than usual, even when they still needed power. On the other side, Mama Bella's group continued to promote solar energy with pride. Their homes were quieter, and many enjoyed the calm that came with it. In the evenings, instead of noise, there was stillness. You could hear crickets, distant laughter, and the soft hum of life moving at a gentler pace. Visitors often noticed the difference immediately. Stepping into a solar-powered home felt almost refreshing, a contrast to the heat and sound that surrounded generator use. Mama Bella's supporters leaned into this, emphasizing not just functionality, but comfort and peace of mind. But solar systems were not without their own limitations. On days when the sun was weak or absent, power supply dropped and frustration crept in. Some homes had to ration their usage, deciding what was most important to power and what could wait. There were evenings when lights dimmed earlier than expected, leaving families slightly disappointed. Slowly, cracks began to show on both sides. Some of Mama Caro's supporters started questioning the rising cost of maintaining generators. They whispered among themselves, wondering if there might be a better way. A few even admitted, quietly, that the noise was becoming too much, especially for children and elderly family members. At the same time, a few of Mama Bella's followers began to feel uncertain. They worried about consistency and whether solar alone could meet all their needs. One or two households even kept small generators as backup, though they rarely spoke about it openly. Despite these concerns, both women pushed forward, determined to win. Their pride would not allow them to step back. Then, something unexpected happened. One evening, just as people were preparing for another night of demonstrations and quiet competition, the entire community experienced a rare moment. Without warning, the main power supply was restored. At first, it was a flicker. Then, suddenly, homes began to light up one after another. Bulbs that had long been forgotten came alive again. Street corners that were usually dim glowed brightly. A wave of excitement swept through the area so quickly that it felt almost electric in itself. Children shouted with joy, running outside to point at the lights as if they had never seen them before. Some adults laughed in disbelief, while others simply stood still, taking it all in. The usual noise of generators faded, replaced by a calm that felt almost unfamiliar. For a brief moment, everything felt normal. Mama Caro stood outside her home, watching the lights glow steadily. She noticed how quiet the surroundings were without the generators running. No vibration, no fumes, no need to check fuel levels. Just light, steady, and uninterrupted. It made her pause in a way she had not expected. Not far away, Mama Bella observed the same scene. She realized that even her solar system, which she had defended so fiercely, did not provide the same sense of collective relief that this shared power brought. It was not just about her home working well. It was about everyone having access at the same time. That night changed something in both of them. People stayed up longer than usual, enjoying the return of something they had almost forgotten. Some used the opportunity to do things they had been putting off. Others simply sat outside, appreciating the brightness and the quiet. Over the next few days, the main power supply remained stable. No one trusted it at first. Many still kept their generators close, ready to start them at any moment. Solar users monitored their systems carefully, unsure of how long this new stability would last. But as hours turned into days, a cautious sense of relief began to settle in. The community began to settle into a rhythm that felt easier and more connected. People visited each other more often again. Conversations became lighter, no longer dominated by debates. Even the air felt different, less tense. The division that had once seemed so strong began to fade. Mama Caro and Mama Bella found themselves reflecting on everything that had happened. In quieter moments, they both began to see things differently. The competition that once felt so important now seemed smaller in comparison to what the community was experiencing. They each began to question whether winning had ever truly been the goal. One afternoon, they crossed paths at the market. For a moment, they hesitated, unsure of how to approach each other. The memory of their arguments lingered, but so did the awareness that things had changed. Then, almost at the same time, they smiled. It was a small gesture, but it carried meaning. They began to talk, not as rivals, but as women who had shared the same struggle in different ways. Their conversation started cautiously, but gradually became more open. They spoke about the competition, the arguments, and the unexpected turn of events. They even laughed at some of the things they had said in the heat of the moment. Slowly, they came to a shared realization. The issue was never about choosing between solar and generators. Those were only alternatives, ways to cope with a deeper problem. What the community truly needed was a reliable and consistent main power supply. Neither of them had been wrong, but neither of them had been entirely right either. That understanding brought a kind of peace neither had expected. They decided to call a meeting. Word spread quickly, just as it had when the competition first began. Women from both sides gathered, unsure of what to expect. Some thought it might be a final declaration of a winner. Others expected another round of arguments. Instead, they found something different. Mama Caro spoke first. Her voice was steady, but softer than before. She admitted that while generators had their benefits, they were not a perfect solution. She spoke honestly about the cost, the noise, and the strain it placed on families. Mama Bella followed. She acknowledged that while solar energy offered many advantages, it also had its limitations. She spoke about inconsistency and the challenges that came with depending solely on sunlight. Then, together, they addressed the community. They spoke about unity, about how their rivalry had divided people unnecessarily. They admitted that in trying to prove a point, they had lost sight of what truly mattered. Their message was simple but powerful. Instead of competing against each other, they would join forces. They would use their voices, their influence, and their leadership to advocate for improved power supply. They would speak not just for themselves, but for the entire community. They made it clear that leadership was not about winning a contest, but about standing for the people. The women listened, moved by the honesty and clarity in their words. Some nodded in agreement, others looked thoughtful, reflecting on their own roles in the division that had taken place. By the end of the meeting, something had shifted. The competition was no more. In its place was a shared purpose. Mama Caro and Mama Bella were no longer enemies. They had become partners in a larger cause. Not just partners, but voices that carried weight, now speaking in the same direction, instead of against each other. Together, they began to organize efforts to raise awareness. They discussed reaching out to local authorities, writing letters, and even gathering signatures if necessary. They encouraged others to share their experiences, to speak openly about the challenges they faced. Their voices grew stronger, not because they were opposing each other, but because they were united. And in that unity, there was a new kind of strength. The community, once divided, found its balance again. Neighbors returned to their usual ways of supporting each other. Evening gatherings became lively once more, filled with laughter instead of debate. Generators were still used when needed. Solar systems continued to serve their purpose. But now, they were seen for what they truly were, temporary solutions in the absence of something better. And together, the women made a quiet but firm vow. They would no longer fight each other over survival options. Instead, they would stand together and use their voices to speak for the general public, calling on the government to do what was necessary. They would demand better. They would not stay silent. And for the first time in a long while, it felt like the community was not just coping, but moving forward with hope. In the end, Mama Caro and Mama Bella realized that no personal victory could compare to the well-being of their community. Their rivalry had taught them valuable lessons, but it was unity, not competition, that truly mattered. Together, they vowed to use their voices to advocate for reliable power for all, reminding everyone that real progress comes not from fighting each other, but from standing together for what is right. Moral lessons. Unity is stronger than rivalry. When people focus on fighting each other, progress slows down. But when they come together, real change becomes possible. Temporary solutions are not the real answer. Generators and solar panels helped, but they were only coping mechanisms. The story shows the importance of addressing the root problem instead of settling for alternatives. Leadership is about service, not winning. Mama Caro and Mama Bella learned that true leadership is not about proving others wrong, but about standing up for the needs of the people. Pride can create unnecessary division. What started as a simple disagreement turned into a serious conflict because both women wanted to be right. Letting go of pride helped restore peace. Different perspectives can both have value. Neither woman was completely wrong. The story teaches that opposing views can both make sense, and understanding this leads to better decisions. Collective voices create change. When the women decided to speak together instead of separately, their influence became stronger. Unity amplifies impact. Experience is the best teacher. It took real-life challenges, cost, noise, inconsistency, and finally stable public power for everyone to truly understand what mattered most. Peace in a community is more important than personal victory. Winning the competition would have meant little compared to the harmony they regained by choosing cooperation. And that's the end of our story. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like and share with your loved ones. Also, make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our exciting stories. This is Tales from Motherland. I'll see you again in the next video. Bye for now.